Distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And welcome to the Capacity Development Webinar, Implementing a Multi-Pronged Strategy for Digital Transformations, Lesson from Asia. This webinar is organized by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs through its Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government, in collaboration with the China National Academy of Governance and the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, and supported by the 2030 Agenda Sub-Fund of the UN Peace and Security Fund. My name is Vincenzo Acquaro, and I am the Chief of Digital Government Branch in the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government. And it is a great privilege to be here with you today and to be the moderator for this opening session with the three distinguished excellencies that will address their opening remark and set the scenes for further discussions. During this 2-hour webinar, international experts and practitioners from different Asian countries will present and share their experience on enhancing digital transformation through investing in digital infrastructure, fostering a digital workforce, improving digital governance services, and strengthening data governance to build a dynamic digital economy. We aim to discuss challenges and share lessons learned from the field at central and municipal level, and get some insights and recommendations on how to reflect the urgent need to gain flexibility and resiliency via digital transformation strategies, to create an ecosystem of partnerships to tackle these demanding challenges and generate the flexibility they need to be successful in the era of digital economy. Before giving the floor to our distinguished speakers, I would like to inform you that the webinar will be recorded and posted on our UMPAN website and is being streamed live on DESA Facebook Live. I would like to ask all speakers and participants to have your audio on mute when you are not speaking to minimize the background noise and echo. Please do not forget to unmute when you speak, and do your best to stay into the allotted time. Last but not least, this workshop has a supported by interpretation feature. On the bottom of your Zoom window, you can select the Chinese or English real-time translation. Without further ado, I officially open the workshop, and I am delighted to invite Mr. Zhenmin Liu, Under-Secretary General, United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Liu, the floor is yours.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, I wish to extend a warm welcome to this capacity development webinar. The focus of this webinar on successful digital transformation is timely. The COVID-19 pandemic has shone a spotlight on the critical role that digital technologies can play to advance sustainable development. In many instances, this pandemic accelerated slow-moving digital transformation, as the digital tools were quickly employed to sustain many aspects of the daily life, from job creation online to digital agriculture to telemedicine to remote schooling to ensuring access to essential public services. As we rebuild from the pandemic, we have an opportunity to tap lessons learned to shape longer-term strategies for harnessing digital technologies. In this regard, I want to thank Bangladesh, China, the Republic of Korea for sharing with the participants today the successes, challenges, and learning experienced in your respective digital transformation journey. Dear participants, for digital transformation to succeed and to benefit the whole society, governments need to implement a multi-pronged strategy. In many developing countries, such a strategy must start with increased investments in digital infrastructure, including through public and private partnerships. These efforts to improve connectivity must be accompanied by updating regulatory tools. Many developing countries have not put in place targeted legislation and data flow on protection of human rights and privacy online, lacking an overall digital governance framework. Similarly, many developing countries have not been able to create and maintain a skilled domestic digital workforce to help drive and sustain the momentum for digital transformation. Dear participants, we at UNDESA are aware of these needs and have developed training projects and curricula to support developing countries in improving effective use of digital tools. We have been working with the UN country teams, our partners in the regional commissions, as well as national governments and national and local institutions. In this connection, I want to thank the Ministry of the Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea and aspire to innovate of the ICT division and the Cabinet division in Bangladesh for partnering with us today. We hope this partnership will continue beyond today's webinar. My thanks also go to the Center for E-Government Studies of China National Academy of Governance and to the Institute of Information of Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. We have more than 20 years of cooperation with these two institutions. Anchored and South-South cooperation will continue to grow. From our side, UNDESA remains fully committed to supporting member states in harnessing digital transformation, in advancing the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We will continue to allocate resources to capacity building in this area, and we welcome inputs and suggestions from experts and participants at this webinar on how to best direct our efforts. I look forward to learning from your discussions. I thank you.
And we also thank His Excellency Under-Secretary General Mr. Liu for his opening remarks and insights. And I'm now the pleasure to invite Mr. Weibin Kang, Vice President of the China National Academy of Governance, for his welcoming remarks. Mr. Kang, the floor is yours.
尊敬的刘哲明副秘书长，各位来宾，
Distinguished Under Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen,
非常高
distinguished
兴
guests,
参加实施多重战略，促进
it
数
is
字
my great pleasure to take part
能
in
力
this
建
capacity building webinar.
国家行政学院与联合国
The
青少
cooperation
在
between
信
the
息化
CNAG
和电子政务领域的
and the UNDESA in the field of
维护秩序，
informatization
我
and
们联
digital government has gone
共
through
同
10
发布
years.
了联合
Looking
国
back
电子政务
on the 10 years, we
中
have
文
jointly released the
构建了
UN
良好的
e-government
合作
survey
伙伴关
report
系，
Chinese
推
version
动了电
for
子
5
政务
consecutive years,
交
building a
流
good
发展
partnership and promoting international exchanges and development in the field of
能力建
e-government.
线
The
上研
co-hosting of such a webinar
推动双
is a
方进一步
milestone
合作。
in promoting further cooperation between the two
我们希
sides.
望通过共同搭
We
建
hope
国
that
际
by jointly building such an international exchange platform, we
中
can
国电子政务
share
发
the
展成
development achievements of
非常
e-government in China, the largest developed
更多的
country,
国家
with the international
能
community,
经
so
验
that more countries
更
can
自身的发展模式，让各国人民享受数字化发展带
and
来的
let
成果。
people of all countries enjoy the fruits of
中国电子
digitalization.
政务发
In
展
recent years,
取得了显
the
著进步。
development of China's e-government has made significant progress.
2020年，联合
The
国
most
电子政务
recent report, the 2020 United Nations e-government survey report shows that China's e-government development index has reached a record high, a very high level of global e-government development. The Online Service Index, which is the core indicator for measuring the development level of national government affairs, rose to 0.906, ranking 9th in the world. The progress made in the Chinese e-government development is closely related to the Chinese government's emphasis on and investment in digitalization in recent years. 20 years ago, the first guiding document on the construction of e-government by China's National Informatization Leading Group was officially released, proposing that the government should first drive the digitalization of national economic and social development, and then formulated the long-term strategy for the development of national informatization and detailed plans for every 5-year development. Chinese government promotes digital governance in accordance with a path of strategic planning, design and implementation, evaluation, diagnosis, optimization, and improvement. The strategic planning link integrates various resources such as systems, organizations, personnel, technology, and data with systematic thinking, and builds government digital transformation goals and phased construction tasks that meet the needs of economic and social developments. The design and implementation link puts the strategic plan into practice to realize its value, takes the demand as the orientation, determines the priority actions, and promotes the implementation of the construction goals. The evaluation and diagnosis stage establishes a scientific and effective evaluation index system, which is used to comprehensively evaluate the implementation effect on the government's digital transformation. The optimization and improvement links are based on the evaluation feedback results, and the priorities of the action plan are revised through a dynamic and flexible coordination mechanism. As an independent third party, the e-Government Research Center of CNAG has participated in the evaluation and diagnosis of the national digital government development over the years. The government promotes the transformation of government functions through digital reform, guided by a public-centered value, innovative practices at local levels, such as approval without any visits, one visit most, and completing one thing at one time continue to emerge, and government's online government services capabilities have been comprehensively improved. People's sense of fulfillment has been continuously enhanced, and the business environment has been greatly improved, providing strong support for China's high-quality economic and social development. Ladies and gentlemen, the impact of COVID-19 continues as we meet each other on the cloud. Digitalization is and will continue to be the new normal of our lives. How to leave no one behind in the digital environment. Our digital transformation strategy must benefit the entire society, especially to provide better services to disadvantaged groups so that everyone can enjoy the dividends brought by digitalization. Well, this requires public sectors of all countries to enhance their leadership in digital transformation. We look forward to further cooperate with the EU and DESA in developing the digital capacity building of leading talents and civil servants in developing countries. I wish this seminar a full success.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wei Bin Gang, Vice President of China National Academy of Governance. And also we really thank your academy for translating the e-government survey, and also for translated the 22 e-government survey that we are going to release soon. And now it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Zhen Wang, Vice President of the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, Director of Institute of Information Sciences, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Wang, the floor is yours.
尊敬的刘立明副秘书长，
Distinguished Undersecretary General Liu Zhenming, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, on behalf of Shanghai Academy of Social Science, I'd like to congratulate on the convening of the Capacity Development Webinar on implementing multi-pronged strategy for digital transformation lessons from China. I want to extend my gratitude to TBIDG and DESA to offer me this opportunity to involve SAS in this event. The whole world has reached a common view that we should promote digital transformation to create its value. Digital economy era has brought new chances to developing countries, and meanwhile, it offers brand new solutions to achieve the 2030 agenda. I think it's very meaningful and valuable that UNDESA has attached great importance to the observation and summary of the progress and experience on the implementation of strategy for digital transformation from different countries. Today's webinar will put emphasis on the lessons of Asia. It provides full recognition, and meanwhile, it indicates Asia's lessons are worthy of being spread and learned. In the field of digital economy development, China is second only to the United States. In recent years, China, with greater efforts, promote digital transformation. In the outline of the 14th Five-Year Plan 2021 to 2022 for national economic and social development of the People's Republic of China, a special chapter focuses on deploying national digital development. Was put forward. It put forward the point that China will welcome the digital era, activate the potential of data, enhance the construction of network power, and speed up the construction of digital economy, digital society, and digital government. The transformation of production, people's life, and governance will be overall driven by digital transformation. Act for personal privacy protection and information security law have been formulated and carried out. Other legislation centering on digital economy, internet finance, artificial intelligence, big data, cloud computing are also on the way. Shanghai, with its comprehensive strategy for digital transformation, is among the forefront of all major cities in China in this field. Shanghai targets to become the benchmark city all over the world and build itself as the digital megalopolis with world influence. Shanghai's digital transformation covers 3 areas: life and governance. It is a holistic transformation and revolutionary restructuring in this megacity. Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, founded in 1958, has 17 institutes and more than 850 staff. We put a high value on the cooperation with UNDESA, and in the past 20 years, we have achieved rich fruits on our cooperation. We are extremely grateful to UNDESA and DPIG for your support, and hope to deepen the cooperation as always. SAS is also willing to cooperate with experts from different countries to make our contributions to implement 2030 agenda. Finally, thanks to friends all over the world. Thank you for joining us to exchange viewpoints on digital transformation through the internet. I wish this webinar a complete success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang, Vice President of Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, the Director of Institute of Information Sciences. Thanks also for highlighting the importance of digital transformation at local level, and also to mention Shanghai, that is one of the front runner on digital transformation in municipalities. This was the last intervention for this opening session. I really thanks all the speakers, the 3 excellencies of this distinguished panel for their insights and the recommendation. They have really set up the scene and warming up the audience for a very fruitful discussion. Therefore, my task as moderator is done for now. I will be back for the closing sessions. So it is now my pleasure to invite my dear colleague, Ms. Adriana Alberti, Chief of Program Management and Capacity Development Unit, DPIDG DESA, to moderate the panel presentation. Ms. Adriana Alberti, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo. Good morning and good evening to our distinguished panelists, and welcome to this panel session. The purpose of this panel session is to hear from various countries on their experiences in their journey in digital government transformation. Before we give the floor to our distinguished panelists, I would like to engage our participants through a poll, and I will ask my colleagues to please launch a poll, and I will pose the following question. What are, in your opinion, the 3 most important features of digital government? Now, you can select up to 3 responses, and at the end of the webinar, we will look at your responses. So I'm just giving you a few seconds to complete the poll. And I can see that there is active participation from all of you. So that is always very good and encouraging. As you continue, I will now invite our distinguished speakers from Korea and China. And I would like to pose the following questions. First, how did your country effectively harness the potential of digital transformation for the Sustainable Development Goals? And the second question is, what are 3 to 5 key recommendations on how to promote effective and inclusive digital transformation at both national and local levels? So please keep in mind that you have 10 minutes each, and we would like to ask you to stay within your allotted time. So our first distinguished speaker is Mr. Hyungwon. He is the Senior Deputy Director, Regional Digital Service Division at the Ministry of the Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea. Please, we can now end the poll so that our distinguished speaker can start the presentation. So Mr. Jung, the floor is yours.
Yeah,
I would like to share my screen.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Hyungwon Jung. I am Senior Deputy Director of Regional Digital Service Division of Ministry of Interior and Safety. It's my honor to introduce the digital government of Korea. Next. Next. Oh. Okay. This is order my presentation, the overview of Korea's digital government, and introduce several services, and lastly, success factors and future plan. Next. Yeah, overview. Next. Yeah, in South Korea, there are a lot of information systems covering almost all services, and 89% of adults use digital government services. And we ranked highly for UN and OECD index related to digital government. The Korean government really appreciates UN DESA's effort for improving digital government all around the world. Next. Okay. It has been more than 50 years since the beginning of digital government in Korea. Pan-governmental level informatization of public sector was started in the 1980s and 1990s. At this time, we established high-speed internet networks around the country. In 2001, the enactment of E-Government Act triggered nationwide scale e-government projects with top priority. In 2010, Korean government integrated services and infrastructure and emphasized policy. Yeah, next. These are the public organizations in charge of digital government. Ministry of Interior and Safety is in charge of planning and general management of digital government. Next. This slide shows an overview of major digital government services. On the basis of the governmental integrated data center, all ministries share digital infrastructure such as servers, and various services are provided to implement service-oriented, efficient, and transparent open government. Furthermore, all ministries use the one system for common administrative services such as digital document management and digital budget accounting. Next. This is the governance framework of local digital government. The most noticeable feature of local digital government is that the administrative structure is divided into the central and local governments, but the information systems are interconnected. The managing body of the local digital government is my ministry, and my ministry is working with an affiliated organization called the Korea Local Information Research and Development Institute, or KLID, to collaborate with every local government. My ministry makes policies and develops and distributes standard information systems to local governments. Next. Local Administration Integrated Information System is a national standard information system used by all local government officers and handles common administrative tasks, including the registration of opening restaurants, issuing hairdresser's license, and etc. Of course, we have several other systems used by all local governments, such as local tax system, citizen registration system, which are also developed by my ministry. Next. Now, I would like to talk about 5 services in detail. Next. Gov24 is the front-end integrated portal to all government services for citizens, including local government services. People can get certificates, submit applications through Gov24. Korean government is continuously improving this service to provide more personalized information and service recommendations for each citizen. For example, when it comes to inheritance, an heir can receive related information at once, such as bank accounts, pension, tax, building, etc. Next. Korean government encourages digital economy by opening government data. Data.go.kr is an integrated open data portal, including the data from local governments. Korean government inspects and improves the quality of data through annual evaluation of data provision and management. Next. From 2021, Koreans can use the virtual assistant for public called Guppy. Citizens can select their own service channel and get the information related to government services. Now, about 1/3 of our citizens have enrolled in this service. The Guppy can provide information about public services proactively and in a customized way through private apps, such as Kakao, Korean WhatsApp, Naver, which is Korean Google, and several other private apps. Now we give 23 different notifications, including tax bills, penalty payment. We also use the Guppy to notify the vaccination schedule and COVID-19 relief fund information. The Guppy also can answer the questions such as integrated public chatbot. Next. The mobile driver's license. In this digital era, our government focused on the mobile ID. At first, we tested mobile ID through mobile government officials' ID last year, and we were convinced its security. Both public and private sector need a digital identity verification for non-contact services. In Korea, plastic driver's license has an important role in personal identification. Through mobile driver's license, each person can verify one's identity using a smartphone. For example, people can provide their identities online and offline at bank for opening a banking account using mobile driver's license. This January, we started trial service, and we will expand on national scale this month. Next. Lastly, I'll introduce a case related to COVID-19. Korean government paid the emergency relief funds to citizens as an attempt to revitalize local economy by COVID-19. We interconnected the information systems of government and private credit card companies. And this way, we were able to make the application and payment procedures faster and more accurate. Citizens had two options to choose. The offline channel was for citizens who don't have credit cards. They visited local government offices, and the application and payment were done through the local administration integrated information system, which I've explained. The online channel was for citizens with credit cards, and most of the citizens chose this channel. And virtual assistants for public notified the information regarding the relief fund through private apps, so people could not miss applying and receiving the relief fund. Success of national policies using digital services gave all citizens a chance to recognize the capability of the digital government. Next. If you want to know more about Korean digital government services, egovkorea.go.kr may be helpful to you. Next. Now, I would like to talk about success factors and our future plans. Next. Firstly, strong leadership of President was an essential law for our success. Our national agenda in the mid-1990s was we are late for industrialization, but let's get ahead of informatization. This agenda made bold investment possible. Secondly, building nationwide high-speed internet networks. Our country is not so big, so we could relatively easily build internet networks. Lastly, the civil registration system played an important role. Every Korean has a unique civil registration number.
Off the floor, please.
Yeah, because of the number, data management and connection was relatively easy. Next. Yeah, Korea had a presidential election this year, and President Yoon took office in this May. The first pledge of this administration is government as a digital platform, and our government established the Presidential Committee of Government as a Digital Platform this month. The new pledge focused on strengthening proactive and personalized services and public-private partnership. The committee suggested several killer services such as digitalization of real estate contracts. Next. The journey of Korean government will continue. I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jung, for that very comprehensive presentation and for sharing with us highlights of the 50 years journey of the Republic of Korea in promoting digital government transformation. It is now my great pleasure to invite Mr. Imin Wang. He is the director of the Center for E-Government Studies to respond to the questions that I posed earlier. So Mr. Imin Wang from the China National Academy of Governance, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Distinguished Director Zhu Shenwang, distinguished Quirrell, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to take part in this webinar, and I'd like to share with you experiences in developing digital government at the national and local levels of China. There are several aspects of my sharing. First is these strategic strategies for promoting SDG, and under the guidance of these strategies, the digital transformation of China's experiences. First, let's have a look at these digital strategies to promote SDG. In recent years, Chinese government has published the 14th five-year plan for national economic and social development to promote the accessible development of digitalization. But these are focused on education, healthcare, elderly care, and key areas to promote the great beneficiary of digital services to enhance people's sense of fulfillment. Well, these are in accordance with the UN's goals in terms of high quality education and employment. Guided by these digital strategies, China, through building a e-governance platform and improving the online service capabilities. On one hand, we have expanded the range of services. The integrated online platform has increased the quality and efficiency of our services. The 31 provinces have also built this 5-level online integrated platform. And village platform has been also expanded. On the other hand, we serve at multiple groups, and we are bridging the digital gaps. We push forward this platform towards the elderly people and make it accessible to all kinds of groups. We have voluntary services, prioritized services to make the digital dividends beneficial to all groups of people. And the second part I'd like to talk about, under the guidance of the strategies, the experiences of China in pushing forward digital transformation. First, we made breakthroughs in key areas. Just now, Mr. Gong said that we have 4 stages. First, overall planning, design and implementation, evaluation and designs, and optimization and promotion. We focus on these key areas to promote the government's digital transformation. The first one, we use data governance to strengthen the development and utilization of data resources. First, we make sound data standards, and then we explore these pilots areas to explore the mechanisms of data sharing. The second, we push forward a transformation of public governance. First, technological empowerment to upgrade technologies and make it a tool, transform from a tool to a capacity. And also, we have a holistic system from top down. And also, we improve the inside system, the basic foundation of the mutual identification and business like that. And the third one is make guarantee construction to make sure that legislation is in accordance with our current development, to push forward the abolishment of old laws, to establish an evaluation system, making sure that policies can be implemented better. In order to break these barriers, in the third area, we'll focus on the digital transformation of government and strengthen the support and experiences. Digitalization, internationalization has make new challenges for our governance. So we need different departments to make it more optimized and coordinated in between these departments. we can see that local governments have set up specialized institutions, or they coordinate these two functions. The establishment of such digital institutions have break those barriers inside these departments. So the system can lead a new round of digital reforms, especially the transformation of the role of e-governments. The fourth part I'd like to talk about this bottom-up and top-down approaches and how we improve government services with those two combined. In 2016, the State Council pushed forward a guidance on the Internet plus government service pilot areas and a guidance of Internet plus government service technology system building. Well, these documents are formed based on the visits and field trips to local governments. So from bottom up, we have these documents have analyzed those problems and difficulties met in this process and formed this nation level document. And then from top down, this has pushed forward the online platform services and good bad ratings services. Based on this foundation, local governments have transformed to smart government, service government. For example, Guangdong province, Beijing, Shanghai have been continuously promoting reforms, and they have formed unique e-government models. To build e-governance, it is systematic work, and government enterprise cooperation can be vital. So in China, Chinese government and enterprises have been working together very efficiently. In the traditional model of building e-governance, enterprises are commissioned by local governments to design products, and these corporations are usually a one-time one. As we push forward our reforms, technologies are everywhere in government departments. So now governments tend to deliver this building and design of e-government services to enterprises. And enterprises may provide technical support to the government decision-making. Currently, governments have built a good model of e-government in accordance with their own situations. First is government-led, because government control and allocate the resources. So they dominate all the stages of digital transformation. And the resources outside the governments are usually scarce. And the second is service delivery model. That is to say, government is a coordinator of this building. That means we put an emphasis on the interaction between government and exterior environments. The third is a hybrid supply model based on the optimization of government service and interior public service. We built an intensive, reusable and sharing digital government platform. Together with enterprises, the government may form a holistic and full coverage digital government platforms. So that's what I want to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wong, for this very comprehensive presentation about the journey towards digital government transformation and the innovative pathways in China. That was extremely useful. Thank you very much. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Anir Chowdhury. He's Policy Advisor, Aspire to Innovate, ICT Division and Cabinet Division of the Government of Bangladesh. Welcome to you, Anir, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Adriana. Good to see everybody here. Let me share my slides. Thank you for the floor. Having a bit of difficulty. I hope you can see the slides.
Yes, very well. Thank you.
Adriana, thank you. Excellencies, participants from around the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. I'll try to go through a set of slides very quickly. Let me start with the contrast in the last 14 years of what has happened in Bangladesh. Started with a clarion call from our Prime Minister in 2008, end of 2008, December. And this was the picture at that time. Quite a bit high poverty, about 40%. Literacy, not digital literacy. Digital literacy was near zero. And generally literacy was about 47%. Electricity coverage was about just shy of 30%. Internet penetration was less than 1%. Mobile penetration was also about 1/6 of the population, 1/8 of the population at that time, actually. And if we talk about digital services, less than 10. We tried to create one-stop centers where people could go and get services digitally. We had 2 in a country of 165 million people. So not a very optimistic picture. But in the last 14 years, because of the clarion call, moving from business as usual to a leapfrogging mindset with the digital Bangladesh agenda of the government, we've been able to make significant progress, as you've seen in many of these indicators. And internet penetration has gone up over 100 times. Mobile penetration has gone up about 9 times. And number of digital services, this number is slightly dated. It's actually over 1,500 right now. Number of digital services in the country. It started from 10, now 1,500. So almost 70%, 75% of the services are now delivered digitally. And one of the things that we have actually seen is we had to create intermediaries. So digital centers, which are intermediaries between analog citizens and the digital world of service delivery. So this is an interesting thing that has happened. And this should have been my last slide, but I thought in the interest of time, I'll just put it up at the very beginning. So in terms of what we say TCV, time, cost, and the number of visits. So this is how we measure inefficiency within public service delivery, service by service. So we have looked at about 1,500 services in the last decade plus and delivered about 4 billion services digitally. And we have seen that for citizens, we've been able to reduce number of days to access these services. About 12 billion days have been saved. About $16 billion have been saved, and about 7 billion visits have been eliminated. So this is how we actually track inefficiency and reduction of inefficiency within the government. So this has actually given all our policymakers and civil servants within the government a target to actually meet every year. So when we started out 2007 or maybe even middle of 2008, this is what we started with. About 10% of the civil servants had computers, but they were treated as sacred objects, not really to be touched in air-conditioned rooms and not really used for anything at all. We started doing what are called vision documents, so for different sectors. But one thing we learned developing these vision documents is the visioning process was much more useful than the documents themselves. So in 2008, when the Digital Bangladesh Clarion call happened, we started doing what are called quick wins. So small pilot projects in every ministry. So each permanent secretary of the ministry was asked to identify one service delivery project and use digitization to reduce TCV, to actually make it much more efficient and much more citizen friendly. And that made all the difference. So the vision documents helped, but the visioning and the quick wins, so hitting the, basically getting the ground ready. And when rubber met the road, basically that's when we started seeing magic happen. One example of this quick win was this procurement process of sugarcane within the government. So we have about 200,000 sugarcane farmers. This was a story from 2009. And since 1932, since the colonial times, we have been purchasing or sending purchase orders to the sugarcane farmers on a small piece of paper. So in 2009, we ran an experiment, and I basically said, why not send them just an SMS? Even though the SMS was in English, most farmers were able to get it read by somebody within the household, within the neighborhood. Some third grader or fifth grader could read that SMS in English because we didn't have SMS in local language. But after 2012, we actually introduced local language SMS. So now everybody can read local language SMS, but at that time they couldn't. But even with that situation, somebody could read it, and the sugarcane farmers were able to bring the canes on time. Before introducing this, there was a lot of corruption. The larger farmers would win out because you get paid by the weight of the canes, and if you bring it in too early, you actually have to leave it outside the sugar mill gates, and the sugar canes dry up. So a very small intervention, which cost about $5,000, putting a small SMS server that served about 200,000 sugarcane farmers and increased sugar yield by about 13% that year. So this is an example of how a small intervention can actually make a large impact. I talked about the digital centers. We started with 2 in 2008, and now there are about over 8,000 digital centers. So as I said, they form the bridge between the analog citizens who don't have access to internet or don't have the skills to actually get to the digital services, but these centers provide connectivity and access to digital services. So we started with just one service, birth registration. Now there are about 341 plus services, land records, passports, e-commerce, banking, social safety nets, and many others across many different ministries, but also from the private sector. And the total number of services that we have rendered is over 700 million, 773 million to be exact, up until the end of last year. And these centers, interestingly, are a very unique form of public-private partnership. So about 16,000 entrepreneurs sit in government offices and provide services, sell services to citizens. An example of simplification process which reduces TCV significantly is called SPS, Service Process Simplification. No mystery there, but it actually eliminates number of steps within the service delivery process. And we have mandated simplification before the digitization process. So the combination of simplification and digitization, and then decentralization to the digital center. So this has actually made significant reduction of TCV to the marginalized people in the rural areas. We actually introduced a service innovation fund. So small pilots done by the civil servants, or by even private sector, startup company on the right, prosthetic limbs created by a 3D printer developed by a startup company. On the left, you see agriculture extension workers using digital pictures to actually identify crop diseases much more quickly. So many different innovations, hundreds of innovations have happened in the last decade or so, just with the support of Innovation Fund. Something we call empathy training. So this is an example of how we actually have taken design thinking from Stanford Design School and customized it to simplify and innovate new types of service delivery. It's an example of how a doctor from a southern district actually looked at how he delivers services and realized that 2,000 of his poorest households don't come to his clinic because it's a government clinic, almost free service. They don't come there because they don't get services. They get pushed out, they get pushed around, they end up at the back of the queue, back of the line, and they don't actually make it to the front of the line to get the services. We created a VIP line for them and a VIP card by developing a digital database for these 2,000 families, 2,000 households. And this is now forming the basis for universal healthcare for the next few years. Again, an innovation done by a doctor in a rural area, and now has been taken up by the Ministry of Health. We use gamification quite a bit in terms of competition across different ministries. Dashboards have sprung up in almost every department within the country, and there is competition and recognition and reward by the Prime Minister at the end of the we use some other technologies also, such as the call center. 333 is our national helpline, and this helpline was launched in 2018, but has been repurposed many times as the Corona helpline, where people called in, and we used their calls to actually track the disease during the first few months of the COVID, because we did not have RT-PCR labs in the country. We had one lab in the capital city in a country of 165 million, but we used data from the phones as people called in. Tens of thousands, actually hundreds of thousands of people called in. We were able to track the disease. Then 333 became the largest telemedicine service in the country, with 4,500 doctors providing free service. Then it became that line to support the families in need who were actually in lockdown, to support them with emergency food supplies. So many different ways of actually repurposing a helpline. Then we have launched in the last 2 years something called MyGov, which is an aggregation of hundreds of services from across many different ministries. So over 700 services are actually available through MyGov. Another 800 are coming end of this year. So again, an aggregation where we have actually broken silos across many ministries. Judiciary, our Supreme Court, was the last one to fall in terms of digitization. They actually resisted digitization for many years. COVID actually broke the resolve that digitization is not useful in the courts. So we could not do bail hearing, and our already overcrowded prisons were getting even more overcrowded. So the Prime Minister and the Chief Justice decided that would introduce virtual hearing, and that actually created an ecosystem where, for the first time, judges were able to hear witnesses over and bail hearing over virtual mechanisms. And now this has formed the basis for a $300 million project, which will actually digitize 2,000 courts in Bangladesh in the next 3 to 4 years. So again, massive turnaround in terms of perception and what digitization can do. Data, I'm coming close to the end of my presentation. Data is actually, as a lot of us say, the data is the new oil. So we actually introduce a lot of data platforms such as SDG Tracker, My Constituency, which is in the parliament. So these track a high number of agencies within the government in terms of SDG achievement and SDG planning. During COVID, we developed the national dashboard, which tracked the disease, as I mentioned before. And we worked with Google starting 2020, actually, to use Google's artificial intelligence and our flood data, water data for the last 10 years, to be able to predict flood in a better way, in a faster way. So it's an AI system, so it actually learns every year and is able to predict forecast flood occurrences. The last slide, I'll talk about 6 lessons that we have learned in the last decade and a half of digitization and simplification and innovation within civil service. The first thing is that the role actually has reversed. So citizens don't come to government offices, the services have to go to citizens. So that's a paradigm shift within the mind of the civil service. The second is big bang approaches have not worked. So bottom-up iterative development, doing many of the experimental approaches, doing pilots and scaling them up actually worked better for us. Breaking silos across the government and also between government and the private sector was extremely important. So data sharing, work sharing, responsibility sharing was really useful. We developed a number of business models. I talked about the digital center, which was one of the very unique business models that we introduced through public-private partnership, where entrepreneurs sit in a government office and sell government services, public services. So quite a unique model, but that has sustained itself. So now this runs on its own. We don't have to provide any kind of subsidy beyond the initial financing that we did in 2010. The fifth lesson is creation of governors. So government officers or civil service who act like entrepreneurs. So they do a lot of experiments, they fail, and failure is encouraged by the cabinet secretary and the prime minister. And there's a lot of autonomy to fail and learn from those failures and scale up the successes. And there is a lot of competition, as I mentioned, through dashboards and recognition of excellence within government. The last but not least, as I mentioned, is data has been really, and COVID accelerated this, has been the new oil in government decision making. And there is much deeper awareness of how data can help in policy making and becoming more responsive to citizens' needs as they are changing very rapidly. And COVID has really given us the acceleration of that thinking, that things are not static. We have to move very, very quickly, and we cannot wait for the future to happen. We have to make the future happen. Thank you very much for your patience here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chowdhury, for this, the remarkable progress, and for sharing with the audience the remarkable progress of Bangladesh throughout the years, and also for highlighting the importance of the leapfrogging mindset, and also that necessity is the mother of all innovations, as we also see through the UN Public Service Awards initiatives, and this holistic paradigm shift. So I'm sure that the audience has found this extremely useful. Thank you again very much for your participation, Mr. Chowdhury. So now I would like to move on to a few questions that we have received from the audience. They have posed them through the pre-registration. I would like to ask our distinguished panelists to stay within 5 minutes in responding to the questions. And I would like to start with Mr. Jung and pose the following question. How can governments implement a multi-pronged strategy for digital government transformation? And what are the key steps? Mr. Jung, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. It's very important question. I'll tell you 5 things, I think. Maybe some method sounds natural. To implement a multi-pronged strategy for digital transformation, first of all, I think it is necessary to establish a plan based on reality. From the planning stage, if the plan is made by discussing with each task representative, strategy will be easier to implement with the interest of the public officer in charge. The reason why the mobile driver's license and virtual assistant for public are introduced realized was also thanks to the interest of person in charge. And another way to implement the strategy is the decision maker's will, or the persuasion of the decision maker. In Korea's case, in the late 1990s and in the early 20s, the president himself had the will to e-government development. A related committee was created, and e-government were selected as a national agenda, and a lot of funds were invested. The decision laid the foundation for our current digital government. The country where the Ministry of Budget and the Ministry of Digital Government are separated, such as Korea, nationwide digital transformation requires the will of policymakers, I think. And additionally, the IT company which support digital transformation is needed. In early stage of Korea's e-government, affiliated IT companies of Samsung and LG played an important role. And also digital education will also needed so that people can use the service well. We built 1,000 digital learning centers nationwide several years ago. So they teach or the weak person regarding digital may have some ability to use the digital government. And lastly, in recent years, cooperation with the private sector has become an important part. It is also necessary for the government and the private sector to find ways to win-win each other and achieve digital transformation through this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jung, for this extremely helpful, useful, and very concise, key recommendations, including highlighting the importance of the strong will of policymakers, digital education, and congratulations on the over 1,000 digital centers to provide that capacity building to citizens. So now my next question will be for Mr. Wong. And the question is, how can governments secure personal data in this era of digital transformation? Mr. Wong, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. In practice, digital transformation may lead to risks of personal data. In recent years, on national level and local levels, the Chinese government has enacted laws and regulations in terms of data security and personal data protection. In personal data protection, the range of it, the standard of it, and the protection of government data sharing, in these key aspects, we have innovated in these areas, and we have tailor-made these regulations. I'd like to specify on several aspects. First is to make sure that there are prerequisites of personal data. We have a principle of inform before using. So based on that, we also have a policy called allowing to withdraw. So that means citizens can withdraw their permission of using their data. And the second, we have accountability to ensure the personal data protection. For personal data, administration agencies, without getting permission from the citizens, they cannot disclose this information except for the allowance of law department. And third, we set a categorization of personal data. In this process of digital transformation, Chinese governments have made great efforts in protecting personal data. One is legislation, and the second is strengthening regulation. Also, governments also encourage enterprises to burden their own social responsibilities, to try helping governments to educating the public and to raise the awareness of people's personal data awareness. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang, also for highlighting the policies on using data and the accountability mechanisms that are in place to secure personal data of citizens. I would now like to ask one other question that we received from the audience to Mr. Chowdhury. And the question is, how can digital government be used to deliver services in the health sector? And we know that this has been extremely important during the pandemic. Mr. Chowdhury, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Maybe I'll talk about 2 or 3 different aspects of it. One is obviously the telemedicine example. Telemedicine was not really popular in Bangladesh because people just would feel that they needed to go to clinics or hospitals directly. And this was costly. Sometimes doctors would not be available and they would have to make multiple trips. Obviously, many times they would actually sit or stand in lines to actually access the doctor. So telemedicine made it very, very easy. Even though the trust issues and many of the diagnostics would still require the patients to visit the doctors, but telemedicine eased the process. And now we're developing a national telemedicine policy and working with scores of small telemedicine companies into figuring out exactly how to scale things up, because we saw huge scale up during COVID. The second is use of health data to do different types of collaboration between the public and the private. So again, we saw during COVID, a lot of sharing, unprecedented sharing. So this is with technology, you can actually make some of these things happen, including patient health records, which we were not able to do before. But now patient health records are being shared between government and private sector in a limited way, but within the bounds of privacy, a localization law that we're actually developing now, data localization and privacy law, we'll actually be able to share data. Third area, and the last one that I'll just mention very briefly, is development of a health data architecture. We actually have seen that many different digital health initiatives have happened in the last decade or so, but many of them remained in silo. Even within the Ministry of Health, we have seen silos coming up and not able to do collaborative work. But again, COVID provided the platform and the understanding that data sharing is very, very important. And now we're working on a long-term health data architecture that brings in all the public and the private sector together to provide better services. And this will also include the development of health insurance and health financing using this combined health data architecture. So those are some of the things I think are quite important for developing countries to think about as digitization of health makes its progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chowdhury, for highlighting the advancements in telemedicine and how Bangladesh has seized the opportunity to transform challenges, during the pandemic into opportunities for continuous development in the health care sector. Thank you very much. Now this concludes our Q&A for the moment, and I would like to thank again our previous panelists from the Republic of Korea, Bangladesh, and China. And now we will be talking about digital. We will be hearing about digital economy. So it is my greatest pleasure to introduce to all of you Professor Fushun Zhao from the Institute of Information, Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, SAS. And I would like to pose the following two questions. First, what's China's experience in developing the digital economy? And second, what are 3 to 5 recommendations on the key steps that are needed to develop an effective and inclusive digital economy? And if I may add a third question that was asked, by the audience, and you might be able to tackle it at the end of your presentation. Someone in the audience asked, could you please explain in simple terms what the digital economy is? Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Professor Zhao.
Yeah, thank you, Betty. Miss, I would like to share my screen. Can you see my PPT?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Good evening. I'm honored to have the chance to share some ideas about the transformation of China. My topic is...
Sorry, Professor Zhao, your audio, we cannot hear you very well. Can you try again, or thank you.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my honor to have the chance to share some ideas on digital transformation of China. My topic is from digital divide to data divide, a new development stage and bridging strategies of China's territorial digital divide. China has witnessed remarkable progress in the digital economy in recent years. However, China is still, at the same time, is still a developing country that its domestic digital development is still uneven, especially in emerging...
Sorry, Professor Zhao, there seems to be a problem with the... I don't know if you can speak perhaps closer to your microphone. Thank you.
Okay.
Please unmute yourself, Professor Zhao. Thank you. Professor Zhao, can you please unmute yourself?
Is it okay?
Yes,
Sorry.
it is okay. Please go ahead. Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, China is still a developing country, and its domestic digital development is still uneven, especially in emerging digital technology fields. Take AI as an example. AI companies in 5 eastern provinces account for more than 80% of China. Data divide can be, in this paper, we define data divide as the difference to digital services due to the opportunities and capabilities of data access, processing, and utilization in different groups of people, enterprises, governments, in the process of accessing or using digital technology. Next question is how to measure the data divide. In 2018, the G20 toolkit for measuring the digital economy was developed. It proposed a framework of 4 aspects: infrastructure, innovation and technology adoption, empowering society, and job and growth. Based on this framework, we developed a 3-stage model of data divide, that is data access, data application, and data effects divide. We use this model to collect relevant data and calculate indicators at 2 levels of China, province and region. The results are showing like this, table 1, table 2. Table 1, okay. This is data divide by province in China. Okay.
Professor Zhao, I'm sorry. Perhaps you can turn off your video so that, because we can't hear you very well, perhaps you could try turning off the video. Thank you.
Okay. In order to understand the data more clearly, we compare. We compare the data in 2021 with those in 2016. As we can see, the data effects divide remains while the data divide decreases significantly. We further use the gap between 2 important economic indicators, per capita GDP and disposable income. We found that data access divide and application divide are not serious between provinces, while the data effects divide is huge. Okay. At the regional level, China can be divided to 4 parts: Eastern, Western, and from this, from table 2, this is phenomenon. That is, although the Eastern region surpasses other regions in most indicators, the Western region ranks higher than the Eastern region in 3 indicators. Okay, like this, you can see here. Then let's have a look at China's policy on bridging data divide. According to an estimation, China's new infrastructure investment was $1.54 trillion during the 14th 5-year plan period. Table 3 shows the scale of new infrastructure investment plan in 10 selected provinces. The total is very large. Okay, you can see. In this regard, one of the major projects in this year is the channel computing resource from the east to the west project. In Chinese, 东数西算. Through the effective deployment of computing resources between the east and the west, it aims to effectively bridge data divide and promote balanced territorial development. Okay. Then, in addition to the aforementioned efforts of Chinese government, the active participation of a large number of private technology companies will be essential. For example, Lushui City in Yunnan province is here, located is here. Now, it's a state-level poverty area. Its per capita disposable incomes of urban and rural residents are equivalent to 85% and 45% of the national average, respectively. The development of local strawberry industry faces several obstacles, such as no technical force, complicated climate features, and poor planting condition. We found a startup company, 智多美, in Yunnan province and a smart agriculture service provider plans to change the situation using the advanced AI technology in strawberry industry. To satisfy farmers with different needs, the 智多美 set up a smart agriculture model. They updated their database continually and used the stimulating model by using AI analytics tools. Finally, they are able to supply a full range of services from land evaluation, expert instruction remotely, and yield forecasting. What local farmers only need to do is strictly to follow the instruction of the AI system and carry out corresponding interventions. From China's case of bridging data divide over time, several suggestions can be taken away for developing countries. First, to implement the idea of leapfrog development and invest in digital infrastructure moderately ahead of time. Considering the particularity of some remote rural areas, there are market failures. To this end, such investment needs to be led by the government or state-owned enterprises. Secondly, after people in poor areas access the mobile internet, the problem of the data application divide will become prominent. Governments should set aside more space for the market and private enterprises, especially platform-based internet companies, to encourage them to take full advantage of the platform. Thirdly, territorial data divide in developing countries like China is still rooted in the urban-rural gap and the knowledge gap. Therefore, promoting smart agriculture may be a fundamental way to bridge the data gap. Last but not the least, governments should pay more attention to the release and disclosure of public data. This is especially important for smart agriculture. Developing countries should make the accessibility and availability of public data an important part of their business environment in the future. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Professor Zhao, for that very insightful presentation and for highlighting very important key recommendations, which I'm sure our moderator at the end of the session will highlight as well. I would now like to invite my colleague, Mr. Wai-Min Kwok. He is Senior Governance and Public Administration Officer in the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And I would like to pose two questions to him. First, what are the key pillars of an effective national data governance framework? And second, what are the key capacities that are needed to develop an effective national data governance framework? Wai-Min, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Thank you. I hope you can hear me well. And I believe you can also see my slides. If not,
yes.
No. Thank you. So to respond to your questions, I'd like to share a few slides entitled Adopting National Data Governance Framework for Sustainable Development. I must say that I benefit a lot from hearing the three excellent presentations from Bangladesh, China, and Korea, South Korea, and during which I think all presentations also touch upon data, and including in the earlier presentations by Professor Chow. So in today's the digital era, the ABCDE here refers to the wide spectrum of different technologies, from artificial intelligence to blockchain to cloud connectivity to drones, data, and anything related to the digital experience. And in the work in UN DESA here, we benefit from the 2 decades experience of working in the UN e-government survey. Some of you may be familiar with. We also share the link. In addition, we are also very much guided by the Secretary General Roadmap for Digital Cooperation, including in the recently launched our common agenda that all put emphasis on digital transformation and the need to step up on the digital agenda. In addition, in the recent years and months of COVID-19, we also look at how countries respond quickly through different digital tools. We also partner with different agencies, including ESCAP, in different projects, like the recent one on policy experimentation and directory sandboxes. So why data and the focus on national data governance framework? As we hear earlier, in any e-government product app, there is always centered around data. And now with the progression towards e-government platform, like for instance, payment platform or digital identity platform, again, it's all centers around data. And earlier we heard the very excellent presentation on digital economy. So the digital economy ecosystem is again actually all centered around data, and we can see how data plays a central part in that. So some data trends, and we already know this, that data grows rapidly and it has been projected to increase to 175 zettabytes. So there's 1 followed by 21 zero. So it's a more than exponential increase. And interestingly, more than 50% will be stored in public cloud. And we have heard from countries that they actually have the intention to migrate as high as 80% or more from private data center to the public cloud. Some paradoxes around data, that data is not only an input, but also output. Data is used in both the front end and back office of the e-governments. While some data are used, many are not, including many of those generated through the increasing digital services that we see. And one of the risks is that while data is not used optimally, some are actually misused that lead to data frauds and all sorts of challenges. We heard many times, especially in the context of sustainable development, there's always a lack of data. But to many government agencies, there is also a data and information overload. So one last thing I'd like to highlight here is the paradox is that government actually have a triple role as a producer, consumer, and regulator of data. And we heard Mr. Anil Chaudhry from Bangladesh mention earlier about how data is actually referred to as the new oil, or some as the new gold, or the currency, especially in supporting the digital economy. But the data is certainly more than oil and gold, because the data, while oil, gold, currency, they are a finite resource, as we all see how we are all affected by the increase in the petrol prices. and also oil. Whereas data is actually infinitely reusable. In fact, the more it's being reused, interpreted, the higher value it will actually achieve. So our work on data governance is actually grounded in the principles that is adopted by the Economic and Social Council, recommended by the UN Committee on Public Administration on Effectiveness, Accountability, and Inclusiveness. I will not go into the specific areas, but there are actually obviously many areas around it. And I will bring to a pillar framework that Adriana asked me the question earlier. So this is also the paradigm shift of how data. On the left side, you see this is what is known in academic, well-established in academic research on DIKW, how data is transformed to information, to knowledge, and to wisdom. But the data in today's digital government is actually more complex than that. Starting from data sources, coming from all sorts of sources, including small and big data, international data, transactional data, to aggregation, how it is actually the consideration whether it should be in cloud or in data center in-house, in link data interoperability, to data exploration. Like for instance, open government data portal is actually one way, to analytics, the increasing use of AI, machine learning. And ultimately, one thing that has not been emphasized enough is the use of data in policy making, evidence-based policy making. So this is the trend based on our research in 2020, and some of these continue to be very relevant. The optimizing data will obviously increase the productivity, accountability, and inclusivity. And not only that, a data-centric government will actually increase the public trust. However, many benefits have yet to be realized because of many challenges, including the most advanced and high-income country, such as the lack of data leadership, resource constraints, and also the increasing concerns about the data quality, security, and privacy. And harvesting public value from data needs a long-term vision and approach, and a whole of government, and we also heard the need even a whole of society approach in terms of engaging the non-government entities such as the private sector and academia to be part of the data ecosystem. So here I'd like to share some findings. This is based on our 2020 survey, that how privacy is lacking. The focus for today's webinar is on Asia. So let us look at Asia. While there's an increasing trend that more countries have put in a private policy in the e-government and digital government portal, but it's still like 62%. In other words, there is actually close to 40% of countries in Asia that have not included a privacy consideration. So this is actually an increasing concern and also a trust concern, a public trust concern. And this is another aspect of data governance. We also look at how countries allow individuals to access their own data. That's on the left side. On the right side is how countries allow businesses to access their own data. In general, there are more countries that allow businesses to access data, but it is actually the global trend, and also in terms of respecting the individual rights to own data, that this should be done more than what it is now. Like in Asia, it's slightly over 50% that countries allow individuals to access own data based on our assessment. So putting all this together, and my last couple of slides here is that in our vision and also through our capacity developments, right now we are actually implementing a digital data governance project in supporting some countries in Asia Pacific and in Africa. And we like to also to scale up how to support government in adopting a more holistic national data governance framework that be grounded by the three principles that I mentioned before: accountability, effectiveness, and inclusiveness. And with three pillars: the first on policy and regulation, second on institutions and processes, and the third on people. And there were seven elements that we focus on. One is on data standards and classification. Second, on sharing, exchange, and interoperability. Third, on data security and protection. Fourth, on privacy. Fifth, on data infrastructure, such as whether it's a cloud or physical data center. Sixth, on digital identity. And seven, on data literacy. These seven elements, in fact, most countries have advanced to a different stage, but sometimes it may not be sufficient. Sometimes it's in silos. So the advocacy here is actually to have an integrated, holistic framework that would actually govern the current and future developments. So data literacy, for instance, this should be across different levels of governments. at the policy and decision makers level, the senior officials should be able to understand and interpret data for insights and policy making. Data stewards are those with a data leadership roles. They would actually provide the guidance to put into policy and technical frameworks. Policy analysis, these are the specialists with both the domain knowledge, and there'll be those who use BI tools and also analytic tools. And widely across the board, public officers, administrators, and any public servant, they should be able to use data for daily operations and reporting, including to highlight any irregularities. And lastly, what is also important is that we actually need to encourage to have more data scientists in the public sector. I believe this is my last slide, that I like to just to mention that the data is also a challenge for the UN system, and we have a data strategy by the Secretary General. There is actually emphasis for action by everyone and everywhere. As a UN system, we do recognize the power of data and also the potential of data, how we can actually enhance our own capacity in terms of supporting other countries. With that, I conclude my presentation. I'd like to hand the floor back to my colleague, Adriana.
Thank you, Wai Min, very much. This was an excellent presentation, very comprehensive, and I also would like to remind all our participants that this presentation, as well as all the other presentations, will be made available on DPIDG website and also on the UN Public Administration Network website. And thank you for highlighting, the importance of the data governance framework, data literacy, data leadership, and the continuing journey to ensure secure data. In fact, I don't know if you would like to comment, but there was a follow-up question from one of our participants. And the question is, how do we ensure cybersecurity and prevent or manage cyber attacks in the digital information era? You touched on this a little bit, but perhaps a few more thoughts, Wai Min?
Yeah, thanks, Adriana. I think that's a challenging and a big question. The cybersecurity concern in the UN context, it also touched upon different pillars of the UN's work that actually involve like peace and security, the human rights part, as well as the developments. In our part of work, we actually focus more on developments. We also support the Internet Governance Forum that look at the cybersecurity across all three pillars of the UN's work. It is actually important to consider, again, an integrated approach. Like for instance, there is an increasing practice to have a security by design in the public sector in terms of in procurement of digital tools, digital services, design of new digital government portals, applications. That security by design should be one of the main concern, or one of the first concern to put into any implementation work, both in terms of physical digital assets and also in terms of software assets. And actually, it also needs to have a whole of government approach, certainly to synchronize across the different agencies horizontally and also vertically across different levels of governments. I will stop here, but it is a much more complex question that I can actually be able to share more here. Thanks.
Thank you, Wai Min, and thank you for highlighting some, critical aspects. Now, I have the pleasure to introduce another colleague of mine, Mr. Dennis Suzar. He's a Governance and Public Administration Officer in the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And we heard from the previous speakers critical aspects at the national level, but also at the local level. But now we will really have a deep dive into the local level. And here we have two questions for you, Dennis. So the first one is, what is the role of cities in promoting digital transformation? And the second one is, can you please share with the audience 3 to 5 key recommendations on how cities can promote effective and inclusive digital transformation? And also, what are some of the key capacities needed? So I know these are a lot of questions, Dennis, but the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm also sharing a short slides to respond to your question, and I will mostly talk about local online service index. The losses. I'm hearing an echo.
It's okay now, Dennis. Try to proceed.
Yeah, so I'll talk about local online service index in this slide. We had started this index in 2018 with 40 cities. At that time, it was a pilot study. And we looked at 40 cities, and in 2020 we reached to 100 cities, and in 2022 we have in the upcoming survey we looked at the most populous city in each UN member state. That's 193 cities. The motivation is simple. Cities are closer to people, more than national and federal. So there is lots of interaction between cities and residents in the cities. And there are also another motivation is to help cities to truly measure their progress, what they have achieved and where they are compared to other cities. And also to create a wide agreement as a common and acceptable standard to measure e-government at the city level. So as you know, we've been doing this for since 2003 at the national level. So this was our motivation. Next slide. I just want to share some interesting facts about cities. So in 1800, there were just 2 cities with at least 1 million inhabitants. So London and Beijing. And in 1900, there were around 15. By 2000, we had 37 cities with population more than 1 million. And by 2030, it's projected to be more than 700, and of which 125 will be in China. So the point here is really the population is growing in cities. And also by 2030, the world can expect to have over 40 megacities, those with 10 million inhabitants or more. And 80% of these megacities will be in developing countries. So urbanization will continue to be fast-paced in developing countries. And in developed countries, urbanization is kind of yeah. So we can basically say that cities are the most globalized parts of any country, and the diseases such as COVID-19 hit cities first. So they need to be ready in their digital transformation, and they need to be able to use all these tools that the previous speakers mentioned. So with that in mind, we have improved the upcoming local online service. We have aligned it with the online service index of the UN Government Survey. So we added a new criteria in the institutional framework. And we have also more questions on for inclusion for women, youth, old people with disabilities, and also more question on participation and service provision. Of course, you will see the results of 2022 in the upcoming survey, but I just want to remind you some results from the 2020 edition. So the first point is there are only a couple of cities performing better than their national portals. These are highlighted in the red circle on the left. So we can say that most of the city portals are behind their national portals. These are represented by dots here. So this really tells us that there is room for improving city portals. Here you see some leading cities in subgroups. You see Shanghai is there, among other. Madrid is there, New York, and etc. And you can look at it on our website. In China, we see China at the national level. China is at a very high level. We looked at Shanghai, which is also at a very high level. So there is some kind of consistency when it comes to China. And this slide briefly summarizes the reasons behind the achievements of China and Shanghai. Basically, a comprehensive digital government policy and initiatives at both national and subnational levels, and also using new technologies and other. Some other findings. So the content provision is the highest. Cities offer adequate content, but services is the lowest. So there is lots of room to improve services delivering, like such as live events or other services through the city portals. Majority of the city portals assessed do not meet various technology standards. This is also one area, one low-hanging fruit for cities to implement. And the positive thing is nearly all city portals are accessible through mobile devices, which was an important finding, since in many developing countries, the computer is the smartphones people have in their hands. In response to your question, I think for cities, there is important element of local innovation. So local SMEs really can help cities in implementing their online services. And also one advice would be like constant communication and collaboration with the national e-government offices. While it sounds obvious, we hear that in many cities we surveyed, the communication lacks with the national e-government offices or strategies. And last but not least, we are also partnering on applying our methodology in different countries. Since our resources are limited, we can only look at the most populous city, but this doesn't mean that more cities cannot be involved in the LOCI. Here you see a cover page of our recent publication that we partnered in Jordan. We applied our own methodology to more cities. And I know that in the past, this was done in China. Now we are also about to launch a detailed study in many cities in Brazil and in Palestine. So I invite everyone listening to us to partner with us to apply LOCI methodology in more than in many cities in their respective countries. So with that, you can visit this page on the screen or get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to take it further. I'm sorry, Diana, I'm giving it back to you. I heard at some stage echo, so if some slides were not clear, I apologize for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis, for this comprehensive presentation. And again, I remind all the participants that the presentation will be made available online. And just maybe in 1 minute, Dennis, if you could also share maybe just your thoughts on and recommendations on how the United Nations system, and in particular our division, you already mentioned some ways in which we are partnering and collaborating with other countries, but how can we further support, or what is our division doing to support developing countries in strengthening their capacities for digital government transformation at the national and local levels? In 1 minute, please, Dennis.
Thank you, Diana. Let me just focus on the cities. First of all, there are many innovations and many projects are happening at the UN system. I just want to highlight, for example, the project that we are working together with ITU, United for Smart and Sustainable Cities. Here, any city government that would like to increase their digital capacities, they can learn more about it. And there are many online tools that city government officials can grab and can implement. One thing that is coming up in the upcoming survey is digital skills are lacking in cities, especially in cities with less population. So digital capacities, digital skills, digital talent, I think is the key in digital transformation. And for that, there was also a relevant question in the chat. I think investing in in government officials' digital capacities, especially in developing countries and with small cities, is a key. And for that, we have also some online trainings, local online service index. So I would welcome to start with digital capacity building.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, and thank you for highlighting, the critical importance of building digital skills and digital capacities, especially in local areas and that are, scarcely populated. So this concludes our panel session, and I would like to thank all of the speakers for their very insightful presentations that were rich in content and also offered many key recommendations. Before closing this session, I would like to engage once again our participants in another poll. And this time the question is, which are the greatest obstacles for digital transformation in public administration in your country? And if colleagues can show the poll, and we'll take just a couple of seconds. Thank you. So everybody can share their views. I see lack of financial resources, infrastructures, technical expertise, strategic foresight and leadership. So I see there's a lot of engagement, and we will then hear from our next moderator what the results were from both of these polls. So as the poll is running, again, many thanks to all the distinguished speakers that participated in this very insightful panel session. And I would now like to turn the floor to my colleague, Vincenzo Acquaro, for the final wrap up of this webinar. Vincenzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Adriana. And I have to say that I was really delighted to listen to all the speakers for this webinar. And really, I think it is it was also very useful for everyone, but for sure for me. And every time that we do this, we always learn a lot by the speakers. So thanks again. As you know, at the closing part is really the toughest one, because it's really not possible to try to summarize all the very good insights of 2 hours of webinars. But let me first start with the results of the 2 polls that also give the sentiment and the feeling of our audience. So I think the best thing to do is that I can start with the last one. That is, the key important feature of digital government. Perfect. This is the first one that we launched. And as you can see, the question was, what are, in your opinion, some of the key important features on digital government? Let me go through this. It seems clearly about 76% agreed on enhancing efficiency and quality of service delivery. That is also very in line with the principle of effective governance and in line with the key elements of Goal 16. The second one is about expanding coverage of service to everyone. Again, here we have the importance of service delivery, but the other important issue is to everyone. So leaving no one behind. It's really important that services do not create a digital divide, also in terms of services, and reach everyone. And then the third one, and I will stop here, is about I think 19%, 35%. That's the highest one. Yes, is offering services to the most vulnerable people. So again, also the importance of leaving no one behind. I think this is a very good insights on the overall perception and the overall needs from citizens. So thanks for taking the time to do this poll. The second one, please. Yes, and this is about no, this is still the previous key important feature. Yeah. Okay, perfect. This is about the challenges, the obstacles, which are the greatest obstacle of digital transformation in public administration. And as we can see here, the first one is lack of financial resources. This is very important because most of the time the first big challenges is the resources, the financial resources, and that also force government to make priorities on what to, on where to invest. So, and then the second one that is about 55%, lack of infrastructures, that is also strongly related with the first one, lack of financial resources, because if we don't have the budget to implement the infrastructure, that it's a big issue. But then the second one is lack of strategic foresight and leadership. So again, it's really as we are discussing here, and based also on the what all the speakers presented, it's the first step is really important to have a strategic foresight, vision, and leadership, and then transform this strategic foresight and your leadership vision in a strategic plan, and then in an implementation plan that is linked with the SDGs, but is also embedded in the digital strategy. And with this, I was covering some of the key points that were highlighted by our speakers. So I still have 1 minute. Let me try really also to highlight a few other points that were presented by the speakers. And I think what was very interesting, we had the 3 countries that really represent as a whole the realities of the Asian region. The Korean, the Republic of Korea, that is is always one of the top leaders in the world on the digital government, and they introduced the issue of government as a platform. The incredible improvement during the years and of China, that now is also one of the key leaders in the region, and was important also the experience of local government, and then also the impressive improvement of developing countries as Bangladesh, that really in 40 years is also reaching an important level of digital transformation, looking on all the citizens. And for, I think the most important message here is also about the about the importance of leaving no one behind. Digital transformation should not become a tool for digital exclusion, but for digital inclusion. So leaving no one behind, starting from leaving no one offline, and then all the implementation of the services that need to be developed to support and to assist and to the citizen and the businesses, and also to enhance the digital economy. We talk about also digital economy elite. And last but not least, we call as the new oil, the new gold. It's about data, the importance of data management. And it was also introduced the concept of data divide. That is also very important in the process of digital transformation. So how to avoid data divide. And we had a good presentation on some suggestions in key. So with this, I even took 2 minutes more. Sorry for that. As I said, it's a very difficult task to close a so rich webinar like the webinar today. I want again thanks all the speakers, all the participants, all my colleagues that were supporting and presenting in this webinar. And I do believe that this will not be the last one, because we will do our best to organize more webinars like this and to continue on collaboration with our distinguished partners. Thank you again, and I wish you all the best for your day, or for most of you, have a good night. Thank you. The webinar is closed.